Dan Mullen is on the brink of real trouble at Florida, and Tim Tebow is doing all he can to save him. His Tim Tebow's take over the weekend was I try not to use the word delusional very often, but it was this is the reason why he's hard to take seriously, and just being honest. And I'm going to say this up front. Listen, Tim, if you're watching this, you want to come on this show, talk to me about it. I do not have a problem with that. The folks at ESPN, PR, they know how to get in touch with me. They have my contact information. You're more than welcome anytime. Here's what Tim Tebow had to say before the Gators played this weekend. This was on Game Day on ESPN. He says, they're not that far off, right? It's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it seems. This is a team, when they're playing well, they can play with Alabama. They can play with Georgia. But they've also played down at the level of competition, especially last weekend with South Carolina. And I think that sometimes, as fans, that you just sit back and see results and you don't always look at why. But that, but it's not that big of a margin between them and really good teams in the SEC right now. There's just a few things that have to get shored up. And I think one of them is leadership and figuring out who the next quarterback is going to be, and a couple of defensive stops. I think all of a sudden you can see Florida back to being really good team, and a team that honestly is very close to competing for championships. They're not as far away as their record would indicate. Immediately after Tim says that, they bring in Kirk Herbstreit on game day. Thank God for Kirk Herbstreit. He says, I disagree with what Tim's saying. I think there needs to be a different approach. That's a nice way of saying it's time for the coach to be fired. Anyway, Herbstreit goes on to say the reality in 2020 is when you have a team that's capable of winning a championship and making a playoff. This team was 3-1 and 10th in the nation, and then things got sideways after a loss to Kentucky. In my opinion, you can lose a team. He's right about that. They start to become more individually focused on whatever their aspirations are. I think that happened to Florida this year in the opt-outs for the bowl game. Excuse me. I think that happened to Florida last year in the opt-outs for the bowl game, and it's happening again this year. You're seeing a team that's quitting on each other. They're quitting on their coach. There's a spirit that's missing in the locker room. That's a problem. This was before the Gators played on Saturday to Samford, not Stanford, and they won that game 70-52. If they had won that game 70-21, if they had won that game 70-30, people would still be complaining. They were losing at the half, and that is just insanity. That you would just forget that part. That you would be in a position that you're having to outscore Samford, period, in a second half. I mean, 70 points. I mean, you got to score 53 points to beat Samford. And Tim Tebow is telling us they're not that far off. Right? Wrong! The most important thing about what we do is being honest with our audience. I appreciate my audience. They've made me, given me the ability to make a living for decades. And one thing I do not do is sugarcoat things to the degree that I mean, this isn't even sugarcoating. This is insanity. Florida has real problems. They were 4-5 coming into this game. Now, that's not good enough, period. They're 2-5 in the league. I think they're going to beat Missouri. I'm just going to tell you right now, Missouri's not good. Um, I thought they might have a little bit of trouble with Carolina, the Gators, but I didn't think they'd lose. I certainly didn't think they'd get blown out. I certainly didn't think they would be down by a touchdown to Samford and allow 52 points in a game. They got problems, and you have got to be honest with your audience. There's something called conflict of interest, and we will allow a little bit of conflict of interest for players like Tim Tebow, Aaron Murray, Kirk Herbstreit, when they're talking about the school that they went to. the school that they played for, they slipped on those, pants. There's a certain amount of conflict of interest that you'll allow. But when it goes over that and when it becomes, you just are a fan, then really they shouldn't be giving their views on things. I mean, Tim Tebow is a Florida fan that happened to play for Florida uh, and now is in television. That's what it is, and it's not more than that. And when you see him on TV, that's what you have to appreciate it as. You don't get that from Herbstreit. People say that about he loves Ohio State. Yeah, all right, and he cheerleaded for Clemson a little bit while his kids were there, but that you got to allow a little bit of that. Laura McKeeman is Laura. What is Laura's name now? Laura, who's on SEC Country all the time. Laura Rutledge is her name now. Laura doesn't do that. Now, I know she cheers for the Gators, and I get that, but she's not doing what Tim Tebow's doing, and it's gotten to the point where you can't take anything he says seriously. I mean, this is again the number one thing that you have to do, and what we do is be honest, or at least be as honest as you're pretty much permitted to be. Florida's got problems, big problems. I did not think that Dan Mullen would get fired 2 weeks ago. I am still skeptical that Dan Mullen will get fired, but it is totally in the realm of possibility. And when, your coach that you played for and you were close with is the guy who's on the chopping block and it's at your school, you've got to, you really either don't need to talk about it, or uh, you need to be honest about it. And right now, Dan Mullen is in very serious jeopardy of being let go. I don't think that's going to happen, but I am not crazy. I think it's possible for sure. He just fired two assistant coaches, one of which was a coordinator. He is not recruiting effectively, which we've known. He is cutting off media access, which is silly and does no good at all. The post-game locker room celebration, now this was before Tebow talked. The post-game celebration after a win over Sanford cannot happen, but it certainly cannot get out there on social media. I mean, that just can't happen, okay? That the optics of the last month at Florida are horrible, but it's not just the last month. Go back to a year ago, Dan Mullen nearly starting a fight with Missouri going into the half. After that game, Darth Mullen. I mean, what are you doing, man? After the Cotton Bowl, I don't know what that was talking about. That wasn't the 2020 Gators. Yeah, it was. They were the Gators. They were running out of the tunnel. You had your guys. The back and forth with the quarterbacks, that can happen at a place. But you know, there are real issues at Florida. The Florida people know it. They feel it. We all know it. That doesn't mean it can't get fixed. But this statement is ludicrous. They are a team that, when they're playing well, can play with Alabama. Play with means you lost. They can play with Georgia. You got blown out by Georgia. So don't the game was not competitive in the third quarter. What are you talking about? That they played with them for a series in the first quarter? Did you play with Carolina? What are you talking about, man? That they played down to the level. Yeah, they definitely played down the level. That is true. There's no question. There's just a few things that have to get shored up. They have a lot of issues, man, and you are not telling your audience the truth. If I were to come in here this week and say Georgia's got to be concerned about Charleston Southern, no one would watch. If I were to sit here and say that Georgia has a real, there's a Georgia going down to Atlanta for Georgia Tech, that's not reality based. Florida has real problems, bro, and you're acting like there's nothing wrong. And the folks at ESPN are doing it to you, man. They're doing that so they can react to it. So then Kirk can talk about it. And then Paul Feinbaum, when he gets bored, Paul can talk about it. This is a business. We are all in the same business. And they're either trolling you out or you believe this. It's one of the two. I mean, ESPN had never made anybody say something they don't want to say, period. So you're participating with it. Florida can get back to being a really good team, and a team honestly that honestly is very close to competing championships. Totally agree with that. I agree with that completely. I do not agree with that this year. I'm not sure I agree with that next year. But I know what Florida is. I know what Florida can be. They should be one of the top 10 schools and programs in the country every year. They're not, and they haven't been for a long time. And acting like Georgia's biggest rival, everything's okay. It's not. It's not okay. There's problems with Georgia's basketball team right now, the men's team. It's not okay there either. It's okay to say that. It's okay to be honest with your audience. Florida's got huge problems. And the last part of what Kirk Herbstreit said is exactly what's going on there. But Tim Tebow doesn't have the he just doesn't want to say it. But this is what's happening. You're seeing a team that's quitting on each other. That's what it is. And, that's not good. It's not been a good season at Florida. And, honestly, since Jacksonville a year ago, it's not been a really good run for the Gators. Let's review, shall we? They beat Georgia and Jacksonville, go on to beat Arkansas, Vandy, Kentucky, and Tennessee, all games that were, no one was worried about them losing those games. And then they have the shoe throwing thing, which I'm not even here to hate on that kid. That was not smart, but hey, it's in the moment. Played well against Alabama and lost. Then just got drilled by Oklahoma. Then you come to this season, 2-point loss to Alabama is their best performance of the year. Lose to Kentucky, which some of us saw coming. Then lose to LSU, which I thought would be a game, but I didn't think they would lose. Get blown out by Georgia, 4 touchdowns, and then get blown out by Carolina. It's not going well. It's not a little problem. It's a problem the likes of which Dan Mullen could get fired. That's where they're at. That's the problem at Florida. They have lost way too many games lately. I mean, if you're coming into November, if you're a weekend in November and you've got a losing record at Georgia or Florida, yeah, the head coach is in serious trouble. But what's happening with Tim Tebow is that he's not telling his audience the truth. Why he's doing that, I don't know. Guys like Aaron Murray, Kirk Herbstreit, I'm just trying to think of other quarterbacks that are in the ball. David Pollock is not a quarterback, but he certainly tells it like he sees it. I mean, you got to live in reality. And what we're seeing right now, it's not reality. We'll see you over on the website, dogpost.com.